right, welcome to Bleav in Clemson football. I'm Will Vandervort. That is Thomas Allen's son next to me. It looks like. No, it's Alex Dodd. But there is some resemblance, Alex. A lot of resemblance there.
I guess so. I don't really know where that came from. That's kind of out of left field. I guess that's how we're playing this thing today. The music was weird on the intro too. Obviously that changed. I don't know where that came from, but it's very calming, very peaceful.
It was very calming and very peaceful, and so yeah, new StreamYard changed things around on us, and so hey, it is what it is. But regardless, here we are. Welcome to Bleav in Clemson football as we get you ready for kind of give you some spring football look today. We got a lot of stuff to go over. Clemson and the FSU and the ACC settled things. We're going to talk about that. As I mentioned, Clemson football. We got Tom Allen's comments about last year's defense. Thought were really interesting. Clemson baseball sweeps the Gamecocks and have now won 10 straight games overall. And then Clemson athletics overall is on a heater. So we're going to talk about that. Obviously, we're going to mention Clemson basketball as well. But before we do all those things, let's go ahead and let's do our, what do we call this? Business. Take care of some business, if we will, Alex. And so let's say tonight's show is sponsored by the Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics and recruiting. Go on over to the Clemson Insider and check them out. We got a lot of things up there. A big recruiting weekend this week. JP's got it all covered from head to toe. You need to go over there and check that out. Of course, we got a big week starting for Clemson baseball. Clemson basketball finishes things up this week in the regular season. Got a chance to set an all-time record for Clemson basketball. So if you're in Tiger Town, go check out the Tigers at Senior Day. Women's basketball, as we talk, are playing in the ACC tournament. So maybe they'll continue their run, and Coach Poppy in his first year will continue to do it. So there's a lot of things going on. You can find everything at the Clemson Insider. We got softball, we got baseball, we got spring football, we got men's and women's basketball, we got lacrosse. We got it all covered for you. Even gymnastics, we got that as well. So go check it out, the Clemson Insider. We appreciate Robert always allowing us to use his platforms to do our show each and every week, and we're glad you guys are joining us on these platforms as well. So go to the ClemsonInsider.com and check that out. Also want to go ahead and give a shout out to today's show, which is presented by Birdie Burst Golf and also Southern Fried Golf. The mission is to revolutionize golf by cruising through the country club gates with style and bringing the game we love back to the people, particularly the next generation, with an innovative approach to smoothing on the learning curve. And also it'll help your student swings as well. Birdie Burst helps teach the game to golfers of all ages and skill levels with tailor-made instruction and on an online platform. Birdie Burst Golf coach Stephen Bradley is an award-winning communications professional. He's a safe sport trained and master student at Kaiser University College of Golf, and he's working on his own game as well. So go check him out at Birdie Burst Golf on Instagram and Facebook. Also Southern Fried Golf. Go give them a check out. And also, if you want to, email at birdieburstgolf@gmail.com. Again, birdieburstgolf@gmail.com. So, Alex, I just want to, first of all, your thoughts. First of all, let's start what just happened, which was last night. And that was a Clemson basketball win over Boston College, a game that they didn't really look that great early on. I should say later in the game. Looked good early on, but then the last 25 minutes, not so good.
Yeah, and I think this game kind of proves another point about this team that we've made a few times this season. There's a lot of Clemson basketball teams, probably 10 or 15 good Clemson basketball teams that would have lost that game last night. But this team, they just find a way to win. They shut Boston College down without a point from the field for the last 5 minutes of the game, and just took over on the defensive end when the shots weren't falling, when they couldn't hold on to the basketball. They just found a way to win. And that's what this team has done all season. And it's hard for me to believe that that's not what they're going to continue to do as the postseason nears here, in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, starting next week, actually, next Thursday, the Tigers will be in Charlotte trying to do something that's never been done, and that's win an ACC tournament championship. But of course, they could still win the ACC regular season championship and get the number one seed in the tournament. And it's not impossible for it to happen now. It's first thing they got to do. The game will be going about the same time. I think Clemson starts at 6. Georgia, North Carolina, and Duke start at 6:30. But if Clemson, it doesn't matter what Louisville does.
Yep.
Only thing that matters at Louisville is if Clemson's the 2 seed or the 3 seed, depending on what Duke does. But if Duke were to lose to North Carolina in Chapel Hill and Clemson beats Virginia Tech like we think they're going to, then Clemson will win a share of the ACC championship. It'll be a 3-way tie between Duke, Clemson, and Louisville. And then Clemson wins the tiebreaker, and Clemson is the number 1 seed. And don't ask me how they win the tiebreaker. I don't know. But everybody out there says they would if it does indeed happen, and Clemson would get the number 1 seed. That's crazy to think, here's Clemson got a chance to get the number 1 seed going into the last game of the ACC season.
Well, it's crazy to think that Clemson's, setting all these all-time program benchmarks, and the best case scenario is they finish in a 3-way tie for first place in the league. But that's just kind of how these 3 teams have been all year. When Clemson lost to Louisville on the road early in conference play, there were a lot of naysayers that were, how could Clemson lose to this terrible Louisville team? Well, it turns out that Louisville team's actually pretty darn good, and so is that Clemson team, and so is that Duke team. So you kind of got 3 good teams and everybody else in the league. I mean, now I guess you got North Carolina's in people's last 4 in, which – heck, I don't know how that's possible because that's not a very good basketball team. But I think SMU is a better basketball team than North Carolina. But that's just kind of how the league's been this year.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a crazy ACC season, except for the top 3.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's been everybody else has kind of had their moments and then had their moments where they didn't look good. The Tar Heels can land a number 4 seed with the win over Duke or an SMU loss. Which I would have thought, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, that wasn't going to be the case. But the Tar Heels won 6 straight, and they're looking good. So they got a chance to win this game against Duke. I don't think it's impossible to think they can't beat Duke.
I mean, it's a rivalry game, too. I mean, anything can happen in a rivalry game. The records go out the window. Numbers in front of your name go out the window. Numbers after your name go out the window. It's just you're just playing a rivalry game. So anything can happen.
Absolutely, it can, and so we'll see what happens for the Tigers again. If they win, they also will set a new Clemson single season record. They would go to 26-5, which would be the most any Clemson team has won in a regular season, 26 games. Also, be the most any Clemson team has won. Period. That now, unofficially, they would have tied the 1990 team, which would won 26 games, but 2 of those games were vacated for playing an ineligible player in the NCAA tournament. So they fell back to 24 wins. So if you go through Clemson's media guide, you see where it says they won 24 games, but they really won 26 games. If you do the math. So, but they had the NCAA took those games away. And so they were given a loss in those games instead of a win. However, to win 26 regular season games, right now they're at 25. They're tied with the 1986-87 team for the most regular season wins in a season. To win 25 regular season games, I never thought I'd hear that at any point in my life. But much less now it's happened twice. But, man, the last time it happened, I was just a youngling. Alex, and that was a long, long time ago in 1986-87. Your dad was a teenager, so was I, and so that's the last time it's happened where a Clemson team won 25 games in a basketball season.
Yeah, it's unreal to think about, and it's validation. Honestly, it's what it feels like for me. It feels like validation for all the crazy people over the years who have said so much nonsense about this program, have said so much nonsense about Brad Brownell as a coach. It's validation that his formula works, his culture works, his program works, his scheme works, and he's brought an unprecedented level of consistency to the program. And this is, it's hard for me not to think this is the best Clemson basketball team ever. It's just hard for me to think that. Now, maybe you don't have those future NBA Hall of Famers on the team, or you don't have those guys on the team. But
Right.
the way they play as a unit, the sum is greater than the parts. And if somebody has a bad day, it doesn't matter. You got 4 other guys who are going to score, or 5 other guys who are going to score. There's just so many capable hands on this team, offensively, defensively, and the wheel just keeps turning. I mean, that's just what it feels like. I mean, me and you talked last night. Basketball can be a frustrating sport to watch. That nothing will get you more mad than watching officials in a basketball game. But this Clemson team has
True.
really taken the drama away. I mean, there's just
They
no
have.
drama. They just go out and take care of business.
Well, even last night, Boston College makes it a 2-point game with 10 minutes to go, 62-60, and you're thinking, uh-oh, because Clemson's turning the basketball over left and right. The officials are not calling walking fouls at all, or traveling calls at all on Boston College. When I saw 3, all of a sudden, Boston College, a team that leads the ACC in fouls committed, and they lead the ACC. Opponents lead the ACC in overall free throw shooting. All of a sudden, Boston College has become Dean Smith's North Carolina team, where they don't commit a foul even though they're guarding the ball hard, and doing all the things they've always done. And all of a sudden, they're shooting free throws every time they get the ball, and Clemson is it. And I'm like, okay, who's the team that's 16-2 and a top, maybe a number 4 seed in the tournament, and who's the team that's not even going to the ACC basketball tournament? But they 62-60, everything's going against them, yet they stick to it. They didn't panic. Chase Hunter gets fouled, goes to the free throw line, makes 2 free throws. Then they get a layup. They get an Ian Shefflin 3-pointer, I Bleav, and then they get another layup. And all of a sudden, it's 69-60. They got control of the game again. And then the last 5 minutes, really the last 6 minutes, Boston College couldn't hit anything. I mean, they went 1 for their last 14 from the field. Went 5-32, the final 5-32, without scoring a single point. Missed 2 free throws during that stretch. You give Clemson's defense credit because Clemson tightened up when it was tight. The game's sitting there, a 3-point game with 5 minutes to go, 72-69. And Clemson just says, nope, you're not scoring anymore. And again, that's a credit to this Clemson team because, Alex, me and you both know years past, Clemson loses that game last night.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, too, for all you people, national people on the outside that are not talking about Clemson.
Pretty much everybody.
When you see a team that's able to not score and find a way to keep the other team from scoring. When you're having a bad day, when you're having a bad stretch, which happens in basketball, and you can keep the other team from scoring, that's a team you should watch out for in March.
Absolutely.
That's a team that's dangerous. That's a team that can make a deep run. That's why Ken Pom has Clemson as one of the 8 teams that could win a national title. That's why all these metrics have Clemson as a team that can make a run to the Final Four. There's a reason for that. It's because they're top 30 in defense, top 20 in scoring, and that's a good recipe for success.
Absolutely, it is. And so we'll see how it goes, man, as they move along through the course of the year, in the course of the rest of the season. ACC tournaments first. Brad, he's made no bones about it. He would love to win this tournament. It's something Clemson's never done. I think this is the chance. This is the year that possibly could do it. I'm not saying it's going to happen because Duke and Cooper Flag are definitely not a pushover. Neither is that Louisville team. And neither is if a North Carolina or a SMU, SMU's getting their guy back. And if he's back, he makes them more dangerous.
Well, it's the ACC tournament. Like weird and wacky stuff happens
like
to Clemson
NC State winning
every time. Well, weird and wacky stuff happens to Clemson every time they play in this tournament.
Right.
I mean, last year you lost to a bad Boston College team, and then you made it to the Elite Eight. So this is by no means a barometer of the success of this Clemson team.
Historically, you're right, Alex. I mean, 1986-87 team I just talked about, they went 25-4. They're arguably probably up until this team the best team Clemson's ever had. And so they go into the tournament, the number 2 seed, and they lose to Muggsy Bogues and Wake Forest, who was the number 7 seed. And you're like, what the heck just happened? And you couldn't believe it. Then 1990-91 team gets to the semifinals. They're the number 1 seed. And They end up losing to Wake Forest, I believe, in the semifinals. And everybody thought it was going to be Clemson Duke that year. And so they couldn't get over the hump. And then there's just been several instances. Brad's had a couple teams that have done, listen, only 2 Clemson teams have ever made it to the ACC championship game, 1962 and 2008. I happened to be at the last one. Hopefully they're going to do it a third time, but win it this time. And I'll be there, obviously, for it next weekend. So it's, I mean, you're right. This Clemson and ACC basketball tournament, I mean, Clemson was the team playing Florida State when they had to shut it down with COVID. That's all you need to know about how Clemson is in basketball. By the way, it's the only year Clemson didn't lose in the ACC tournament.
It's just that for whatever reason, that tournament, and I've got plenty of theories of what that reason is. Probably because it's played in South Virginia a lot. I mean, North Carolina a lot. That's probably the reason that happens. But, there are also a few teams or 2 teams that I can think of right off the top of my head that know going into that tournament that they got to win the thing to make it to the NCAA tournament. And that's SMU and that's Wake Forest. And those are dangerous teams to play in that field. And I don't want to see any part of them on the way to trying to do what NC State did last year. I don't want to see any part of that next week.
No, I don't either. Let's just let's take it one game at a time. So that Thursday game, whoever Clemson is playing, when they're playing, just take that one game at a time, and we'll see what happens. And they get a 2-day bye. That's the beautiful thing. So they won't play till Thursday. Everybody else starts playing on Tuesday and Wednesday. So that means you only need 3 games to win a championship. And so right now, as we're looking at it right now, Clemson is 4 games from winning an ACC championship. That's a good way to look at it, right?
And if Clemson wins 1, they're winning 2. That's my philosophy. Brad Brownell Clemson philosophy in tournament play. Doesn't matter if it's the NIT or the NCAA tournament, the ACC tournament, or the college basketball invitational. If they win 1, they're winning 2.
Yeah.
I agree. Take it for what it's worth.
I agree with you. If you want any comments, you can comment in there. We're all going to talk some Clemson football here in a second. That's what we're here for. That's why it's called Bleav in Clemson Football. But we're talking about everything Clemson, as you guys know, if you followed us before. But if you could leave some comments, we'll definitely try to pull them up. I know we got one that's already in there. We'd love to have a couple more if you could. I know it's a Thursday night, a little bit different night for us to come on, but that's because, everything in the world's happening right now at Clemson, and yours truly has to cover a lot of it. And he's so I got to pick my days of when I can do the podcast, and so it makes things a little harder this time of year for me. But please stay patient with us and just watch out for us when we're going to be coming on. I try to give you guys several hours notice before we come on. So anyway, appreciate those that are on and joining us right now. And the ones that will watch later or listen to us later, because we know we have people that do that as well. And we appreciate you guys. Alex, I want to kind of talk about this right here. Clemson and FSU, the ACC settle legal complaints. And so in case you were under a bridge this past week, and I don't mean you, Alex, I mean the other people that are that could be with us. Clemson and Clemson's Board of Trustees settled. They liked the agreement with the ACC. Florida State did the same. Their board did the same. And so then the ACC went ahead and said they would settle as well. And so basically what happens is the reason that they settled their lawsuits was because the ACC, you knew last year or last month, Alex, when the ESPN thing came out where there was a new structure and the ACC was, the whole contract was restructured and everything. You knew then this was going to happen because it sounded like this is something that was going to make Clemson and Florida State happy. They did some more things. And then this settlement, when all the news came out that they finally settled, they explained it a little bit more. So, I was on the teleconference the other day, or I should say Zoom call with the Board of Trustees and what Graham Neff, Clemson's athletic laid out on. So here's how it works. The settlement framework is this: enhanced revenue distribution model, which rewards performance and media value measured by viewership. Next, the new exit fee schedule. So that's going to change, coupled with the clarity that a withdrawing member leaves with the future media rights fees and clear upon the payment of only the exit fee. In other words, you pay the exit fee, you get your grant of rights. You get to take them with you. which they couldn't do before. So that's new. The viewership pool, 60% of the ESPN base rights values goes into a viewership pool. This is fully proportional to Clemson's total viewers divided by the ACC's total viewers. So in a 5-year weighted rolling viewership figures, most recent years will have a greater weight. This only includes football and men's basketball. So understand. So basically what we're saying here is that if Clemson basically 60%, let's figure it this way. Clemson's going to get the majority of the money. That's what it's saying, because Clemson and Florida State are, and maybe Miami, and throw in a couple of teams. It's rewarding the team.
North Carolina will get a big share from basketball.
Right. But basketball's secondary in this.
Right.
75% of the ACC's revenue dollars comes from football. So take that. Basically, it means this. Clemson, if you put Clemson's numbers last year, the last 6 years, Clemson has led the ACC in people watching football. No, they've 6 straight years. Clemson has been the number one team that people watched in the ACC. Okay, 5 of the top 10 most watched college football games. Let me say it this way: in the last 10 years, the most watched college football games, Clemson 5 times has been that game. Okay, during the course of each season. So what I'm saying is this: Clemson is one of the most viewed teams in college football. Clemson is the most viewed team in the ACC in college football. So Clemson's going to get more money than anybody else if that continues. And why wouldn't it continue? Because Clemson right now they're in the college football playoffs last year. They're projected to go again this year. They won the ACC last year. They're projected to win the ACC this year. Got a good team coming back. They're building the program. It's going in the right. You're seeing everything kind of go that way, right? Where Clemson
and Clemson fans care, and there's a lot of hate watchers too,
right?
So you're gonna get a big pool. Clemson's a national brand, just like Florida State, and they're gonna get pull. I mean, the Greenville-Spartanburg TV market is a top 10 college football market every year.
It's top 3,
and it's not a top 10 media market. It's not. No. It's not even close to a top 10 media market.
Top 40.
Yeah, but that's how much people in the upstate care about college football, and that's how much people care about Clemson football.
Yeah, the top 3 markets for college football, which means where the most eyes are watching college football on any given Saturday, is Birmingham, Columbus, and Greenville-Spartanburg.
Yep.
And it's no coincidence, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. It's no coincidence. Those are the 3, and if you look, those are the 3 most consistent winners the last 15 years. So it makes sense why those are the top 3. But with that said, so what does that mean? Okay, Clemson this past year made $44 million in television revenue from the ACC. If this was already in play for this past year, Clemson would then get the additional money for its not only for going to the college football playoff, which is an extra $4 million that they're allowed to have. So Clemson this past year's college football, they're going to get to keep that as a ACC initiative thing. So if you go to the college football playoff, SMU the same way, you get to keep that money. You don't have to share it. So Clemson is not sharing its college football playoff money anymore. So Clemson gets that money, plus they get the money for how much viewership they get based on the last 5 years and the current season. So, Alex, that's an extra $15 million for Clemson.
Yep.
All right. So
$7 million less for everybody else.
And $7 million less for everybody else. So Clemson's going to end up getting, if that was done this year, Clemson be making almost $59 million, which is right up there with the numbers. You're in the ballpark of what the SEC is getting and the Big Ten's getting. Yep. And that's all you want if you're Clemson. And here's why, guys. ACC's not going to be able to get them all the way up to the top. But Clemson doesn't need them to.
Yep.
Clemson is one of the few schools of the country that doesn't need that, because Clemson has you guys. They have IPTAY. Yep. IPTAY gets Clemson over the top. That's why Clemson this past year and its revenue brought in $196 million. And South Carolina, even though it's got all that television money and everything,
and more alums.
and more alumni.
More alumni.
They only brought in 169, or somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, so you see how much different Clemson got than South Carolina got, even with South Carolina already having those advantages. IPTAY's the difference. IPTAY not only puts Clemson up, it carries Clemson over sometimes, and it allows Clemson to compete. So Clemson gets close enough with these new numbers. Now they're going to get close enough, and then IPTAY is going to put them up even right at it or over, and they're going to be able to compete at a high level, just like they have been in years past. Great news for Clemson. This is a great deal for Clemson. I think it's a great deal for Florida State, too. I think Clemson and Florida State win. And, Alex, I think the ACC wins, too, because even though teams can leave by 2031, but if you're making the money, if Clemson and Florida State are making SEC money and Big Ten money, and they're doing it in the ACC, why in the world do you want to leave? You don't want to go to those conferences and not make the college football playoff when you got a better chance every year to do it here.
And here's the thing, guys, to think about in terms of Clemson and the SEC and ESPN and the SEC. I don't know if you guys keep up with Major League Baseball like I do, but ESPN just said that they offered the MLB 60% less on their contract for Sunday Night Baseball in their option to renew for next season. Mm-hmm. And the MLB said no. So ESPN's starting to feel the heat on all these big deals that they're shelling out. They've had to cut staff for several years in a row. And, it's not like they have $1 billion in the closet to give for another deal for Clemson and Florida State in 5 years. Now, some of this could be calculation for in the future if they want to invest more in college football and they wanted the possibility of having a bigger SEC again in 5 years. That might be part of this calculation, but it doesn't seem likely.
Maybe so. It doesn't seem like, and of course, in 5 years, we don't know what college football is going to be like.
Right? ESPN might not exist in 5 years.
It may not.
College football may be in a super league in 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, in the ACC, listen, what the ACC did here, which is pretty much put a Premier League in place. And, if you soccer fans out there know what I'm talking about, that's what this model is. This is a performance model. The teams that are doing well are going to get paid more. The teams that aren't going to. So eventually, it's probably going to lead to some teams leaving in your 86 and things. And maybe it eventually comes to where you have teams come in and teams come out. And depending on how much money they're making and what you're making, I don't know. But this is a similar model that the ACC is doing. And, Alex, I'm telling you, people are going to copy them. They're going to copy them. There's no doubt in my mind that, because why wouldn't you? If you're Georgia, you're sitting there like, hold on a second. Clemson's got it good. What's going on here? They're not having to share their money with Boston College and Duke and those guys who never win. We're having to share our money with Vanderbilt? Come on. What's going on? We're having to share our money with South Carolina? Come on. We're better than that, right? That's what's happening. That's going to happen in these other leagues. I'm guaranteeing you.
And this is very similar to what the Big 12 did with Oklahoma and Texas with Rev Share. 7 or 8 years ago. And it's what ultimately, or longer than that, it's like 10 years ago. It's when Missouri and Texas A&M left the league to go to the SEC. Similar to what they did then. And we've seen what kind of the lifespan of the Big 12 has been since then and how things played out. Another thing this does for the ACC is it gives them a chance to get their ducks in a row before changes in college football come to. So this really is a win-win for all parties involved. The ACC gets essentially 5 years with Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina, and whoever else in the league that brings in the money. And it gives them an on-ramp or an off-ramp for when things in college football seem to inevitably change here in the next 5 years.
So basically, Clemson gets an opportunity to get an extra $120 million revenue over the next 6 years. And so with the viewership poll and the success initiatives, I mentioned they get to keep the college football playoff money now, just like they do with basketball. So that's always a good thing. But here's the thing that's interesting is the exit fee. Here's how it works right now. The current exit fee is 3 times the ACC budget, which right now would make it over if Clemson wanted to leave at the current. This is the current contract, right? The current one now that's still in place right now is 3 times the ACC budget, escalating over time. And it's basically the fiscal year 26. It's 165 million plus or minus 3 times their budget. Okay, so you do the math, right, Alex? That's a lot of money. That's over 500 million, right?
Yep.
So, all right. So now, starting with the new settlement, okay, the fiscal year is 165 million. So it'll be descending 18 million per year until it reaches 75 million in 2030-31. And then after that, it levels off. So in other words, right now it's 165 million starting in 2026. Team could leave at 165 million, pay that 165 million. That's it. Now I say that's it. That's still a lot of money, but it ain't 500, right?
And you can prepare for that.
Correct.
You can start setting money aside in a capital fund to prepare for what college football is going to look like in 2030, I mean, heck, it could be 2035 before anything changes. Could be 2036 before anything changes. But now you have the opportunity to start preparing for that future. You're not in a limbo. You don't, have no idea what's going to happen. Now you have some kind of game plan for what you want to do as an athletic department. We got a question from Scott here.
Yeah.
Will the ACC be disclosing the brand viewership formula details? Concerned they may exclude non-conference games, and that hurts Clemson's ability to get paid more.
No, they can't. So if a game is hosted by the ACC team, so let's say Clemson is playing South Carolina in Memorial Stadium, the ACC gets that money from ESPN.
Yeah, it's the same as it is now.
It's the same as it is now. That's not going to change. So when Clemson plays South Carolina, you're right. Clemson does it, but they've never got paid for that game because that's an SEC game. South Carolina gets paid for it. So understand, how those non-conference. If this year against LSU, Clemson will get paid for that game. So that's how it works. And then going back to the 165 right now, it'll move down to 147 next year, and then subtract 18 from that, it'd be 129 the year after that, and we how that works. The best part, Alex, as I mentioned earlier, is upon payment of the exit fee, you get to keep the grant of rights. So if Clemson were to leave, they pay whatever the exit fee is, right? And then they can just leave after that. They take their rights with them and they go and be whoever they're going to be, So the advantages of the settlement: absolute clarity on media rights now, which I just talked about, the enhanced revenue distribution model, which we just kind of went over, and then the declining exit fee, which we just went over. And so for Clemson, it's a excellent fit for Clemson. The ACC, once again, is historic football success and access to the college football playoff, as well as permanent conference play in the Olympic sports. So this is an advantage for Clemson all the way around, at least for the next 5 years. After that, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's be honest, guys. And that has nothing to do with the ACC. I don't know what's going to happen with the landscape of college athletics because it is so much changing every day. So it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting time to be a college sports fan. Who knows what it's going to look like in a few years. I'm just trying to enjoy it. Honestly, if anything, this new kind of age of college sports is maybe have more appreciation for something like college baseball that still has an essence of purity to it, with all these changes that are happening in the landscape in football and basketball.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm just glad they get it out of the way now.
Because now we have some idea of what's going on. There's not this lawsuit that me and you have to talk about every 3 months when something develops. It's get out of the courts and let's go see what's happening on the field now.
Exactly. Like, for instance, ACC spring football meetings are going to happen here in a couple months. And last year, this dominated that, with the lawsuits and all that. And it dominated, was Clemson and Florida State leaving? And everybody wanted to know what the coaches thought. And it really kind of took aside what they were trying to do for other things. Now that's out of the way. So when we go down there, it's like, okay, college football. What are we doing with the college football playoff? What's going to happen there? College basketball. What are the new rules that are going to happen there? What are we going to see? Because there's a lot of speculation about maybe expanding the NCAA tournament next year. The ACC talked about that last year. We'll get into that more later. But the ACC talked about that last year at their spring meetings. Well, now we can dive more into it this year because we're not worried about this whole ACC pending lawsuits with Clemson and Florida State. That's gone. Clemson and Florida State ain't going nowhere. We're all happy. Everybody's happy. Let's stay happy. at least for 5 years, and then we'll do that.
And Scott, I think this is a great point. I wonder if Clemson drops the FCS game to get another game that'll be Nielsen rated. Now, this is something that you have to think about going forward. If you're getting paid based off of viewership, this is something you might have to think about. Or you do what Clemson's doing this year, and you play an LSU at home, and it doesn't matter as much whether you have that FCS game or not. So it might be a situation like that. If you're having to go play on the road or a neutral site where you're not the home team against a Georgia or an LSU, then maybe you don't play the FCS team. Maybe you play somebody else that gets a few more eyeballs, a good team in the group of 5, or it could even be a lower tier team from another conference, somebody that gets more eyeballs than.
Well, here's the thing, Alex.
Furman.
What team came out last month and said that they wanted to play Clemson, Florida State every year?
That would be Notre Dame.
And do you think that's just coincidence? He throws that out there?
No. I think that was trying to look like a prophet based off of conversations that have already happened.
Yes, that's exactly.
You want to feel like a football savant? Then go tell somebody what you heard in a meeting a month ago that's coming down the pike in 2 months, and just go ahead and say it. It makes you seem like a genius.
And that's why you wonder, like, Notre Dame, I think, is going to be more, because I think what you're going to see happen with the whole mess, and we talked about this last time, with the whole mess with the SEC possibly going to 9 games and then playing the Big Ten each year. What does that mean for Clemson and SEC going forward? It probably means Clemson's going to end its series with Georgia and LSU and Auburn and those guys they play all the time. Probably that's not going to happen after 2027, if I'm going to be honest with you. I see those going away, but they're being replaced probably by Notre Dame. And then the years that and then the South Carolina game, I don't know. I think that's in limbo. I think if Clemson's able to keep North Carolina, if they got Notre Dame every year and they got South Carolina every year, I think Clemson's content and will probably keep that FCS team for the most part, because at least under Dabo, because Dabo's big on that. He talks about how he wants to help the other schools in the state be able to play football too, and that's a big payday for them. And so I can see Dabo in South Carolina the same way.
I know everybody hates those games. I'm all for it just for that, to support those programs, to keep football going at places that have a rich football tradition, like Furman, like South Carolina State, like Wofford. These are programs in the state that have rich tradition, like the Citadel. Their tradition might not have as much winning, but those are our tradition-rich programs, and it's good for the state for those games to keep being played.
Yeah, they get like a couple $1 million for coming and playing Clemson. I mean, that funds their whole budget for the whole year. And it's not funding Furman's budget for football. It's funding Furman's budget for those other sports, for the Olympic sports. That's why they play those games. And kudos to Dabo and kudos to Beamer that they want to play those games to help those schools, because they know how important that is. Because without them, then those schools are going to lose. They're going to have to make cuts, budgetary cuts, without them. So that's a big deal. So I understand the fans' frustration and they don't like those games, but you know what? It's for the better. It's for the better good. You're playing 11 teams a year that are Division I, big time college football, and that one time, it's fine. It's fine. If Clemson's okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and this is something that has been discussed in college football, that you could potentially play that game in the spring as a scrimmage opportunity or as a kind of a preseason thing. That's been discussed, but I think that's
potentially
because it's not allowed. Well, I'm saying that's a little farther down the road.
Yeah.
But that's something that is a viable option, I think.
The NCAA's got to help that if they want to do it. Yeah.
And if this thing goes to where the NCAA doesn't matter, which is very possible. In the near future, I think that's a.
But then you're going to have to pay, guys. I see what you're saying there, but guess what? Clemson's going to have to charge for that spring game, because they're not going to pay Furman for free. You're not going to, Furman ain't coming up here for free to play Clemson in a spring game scrimmage. You guys are going to have to pay for it, because they got to get the money from somewhere to pay Furman.
Well, they'll have that money when the NCAA goes away and you're playing in a super league, you'll have that money. That won't be an issue.
Well, we'll see. But right now,
that's down the road, obviously.
Yeah.
Could,
Well, I
could be
appreciate
5 years, could be 10, but interesting thought there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Alex, let's shift over because we're talking football a little bit. So let's switch over to spring football practice. Clemson, if you didn't know, started spring football last Friday. So there was last Friday was crazy at Clemson. I'm gonna tell you how crazy it was at Clemson. Okay, not only did you have spring football practice started, which is not a big deal because fans can't see that. It's a big deal for us, the media, because we got to find a place to park. All right, bro. Here's why it was a hard time to park for the media, because softball was playing a doubleheader that day and a tournament, so their parking lot was full all day long. Baseball was playing South Carolina, so that tournament that parking lot slammed full. Gymnastics was hosting a 3-team meet, so that parking lot was slammed full. And then tennis, men's and women's tennis were hosting matches, so their parking lots were slammed full. You could not find a parking place at Clemson on Friday.
And by the way, school's still going on.
And
so you have all those commuters in that lot down there too. So nowhere to park on campus. You have to park at the dang at New Spring and walk over to spring
I've been doing this 20 years. I've never seen anything like it. It's never been like that. What it was the last Friday. It has never been like that. I mean, there was no place to park. I can't even remember where I parked, to be honest with you. I got there early and parked at baseball. That's what I did.
That beats the heck out of when they used to do those big, kind of athletics festival weekends or whatever, when they had the spring game and they made sure everybody else was in town. I feel like last Friday probably beat the heck out of that.
It did. It was something else. Now, listen, here's the thing about it, though, that a lot of news came out of that Friday. We talked to Dabo Swinney before practice started. We went and watched practice. That was good. We'll kind of get into that a little bit here later. But one thing I want to say is Dabo Swinney, first thing he mentions out of the gate was there will be a spring football game at Clemson. That's going to be April 5th. It ain't going away. All right. Not going away. As long as Dabo Swinney's the head coach, it doesn't sound like it's ever going away. He even made fun of the people that said, they're getting ready to spring game because they're afraid somebody's going to poach their players. That was like, they're going to poach your players anyway. Tampering's going to happen regardless if you have a spring game or not. That was like, that's like the craziest thing. It's like they're going to watch a spring game, a scrimmage, and they're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to go get that guy."
That's the big linchpin in tampering is the spring game.
It's the spring game. Yeah. Exactly.
Connor Stallions was buying $300 tickets for his whole family to go watch Clemson play when he was coaching at Michigan. You think the spring game's a big opportunity for tampering? Come on now.
Hey, I would love to see with our good buddy Dave Doran up in Raleigh got Dabo's comments handed to him. I would love to have been a fly on the wall and seeing his reaction to Dabo's
maybe
comments.
The spring game doesn't matter as much at a place like NC State where 6 people sit there to watch the game. But the orange and white game's always been a great deal at Clemson. And my thing too, I try to say this every year, something I think is undervalued of why the spring game's so important. There are a lot of people in the upstate of South Carolina that can't afford to spend $500 on a football weekend in the fall, but they can go over for the spring game and watch it for free and get to experience something about Death Valley and about Clemson football. And those are special memories for people. And that needs to stay a part of Clemson football. I don't care what everybody else is doing. If South Carolina wants to play or doesn't want to play their spring game, I could care less. But that game means something at Clemson, and it needs to stay a part of Clemson football forever.
No, I don't disagree with you, buddy. It's a tradition. It's something that the fans get to do, and you get to come to Clemson an extra time and go walk around campus and see all the good stuff. And Dabo, and here's something that got lost in the news with Dabo Swinney says they're having a spring game, and of course, the national media made a big deal about it. Oh, Dabo, they made Dabo seem like a bad guy for hosting a spring game for his team. How dare Dabo give the fans a
host
spring
an game? Open scrimmage for the benefit of the fans.
Yeah, how dare he? So evil, that Dabo Swinney. He's a horrible man. Horrible hands a spring game. But Dabo, I liked what he said. He came right after that, and nobody's talking about it. Dabo says right after he says, we're going to have a spring game, he says, oh, by the way, we're going to try to do a fan appreciation day, too, for the fans. He's like, we're going to try to figure a way to get that done. So while other people are saying they're taking away a spring game and they're going to try to do something for the fans, but they don't know what they're going to do, Dabo's saying, we're going to give you a spring game. Oh, yeah, and we're definitely going to give you something else also. That got lost in the whole melee the other day with the news that came out because everybody was just focused on what Dabo said they're having a spring game. Oh, my gosh, Clemson's having a spring game. Dabo doesn't care about his players, Yeah,
I mean, I'm that's good to hear too. The potential of bringing Fan Appreciation Day back. Obviously, more complicated now with NIL and
that's why they got to figure it out.
You got to pay guys to be there. You got to pay guys to sign autographs. That stuff means something now. But man, I had some great memories from Fan Appreciation Day as a kid. It's like signaled that football season was back when I'm sweating my tail off in 95-degree heat on a August Saturday at 1:00 in Death Valley in the concourse. I mean, those were special days. So good to hear that there are going to be a bunch of other little kids in the Clemson area that are going to get to experience that in some way again, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too. And so kudos to Dabo and that, and kudos to Clemson to try to figure out another way to get fans.
And I wonder too if baseball didn't have something to do with that. With baseballs, we like to party. If that didn't
Dabo
have
hosted it, the football team hosted that, and Dabo might have thought, hey man, that's a pretty good idea, and said, maybe we can do something similar. Maybe that's what Dabo's thinking. Hey, don't let a good idea ever slip by William Christopher Sweeney. He pays
Trust
attention.
me, he'd have people walk in the stands at Death Valley shaking veterans' hands in the second quarter if he could. He's not going to miss out on a good idea.
No, he's not. With that said, though, there was spring football practice, and so people want to know. Hold on a second. What we got here, Alex? Spring game is the only game I could afford when I was younger to bring my whole family of 5 to. Glad it's staying. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what you're talking about, Alex. And like you and me, we have great memories from spring games and going up there and just, watching Clemson play football game. It didn't matter. You didn't get anything out of it, but it's just see Clemson play and good to see that it's like a family. The thing about Clemson is I try to tell people and they're like, well, what's different about Clemson? I'm like, well, it's like a family reunion. It really is. It's like that every year you got your friends and family that you tailgate with, and you only see them during those football games. And so guess what? The spring game gives you another chance to do that. And so that's kind of what it's like. It's like the spring version for the family reunion. You get it in the fall, and you only get one in the spring, and you get everybody together. Everybody gets to hang
and it gets people on campus. It gets people in Doug Kingsmore Stadium. It gets people in McWhorter Stadium.
Yeah.
It gets people to check out tennis. It gets people on campus to see
or to check out the brand new. You haven't seen it yet. Oh my gosh! Wait till you see the Olympic sports thing. I don't know what they're calling it. I can't. I'm sure it's the name.
Watt Family Wellness.
Yeah, the Watt. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that thing is beautiful. When you come into Clemson, as you're coming down Perimeter Road, coming from Greenville, coming down Perimeter Road, fans that haven't been here, you're going to see that. You're going to be like, whoa.
Well, it's weird for me.
It's so nice.
Just watching the baseball game, so they put the camera down the third base line. I'm like, what is that monstrosity that's dwarfing the Chapman grandstand over there in left field?
Yeah, it is. That's the best way to describe it. What you just did. And if you're coming from football and you're coming from media, like I was walking yesterday from the media facilities, and like you see that now that view from that angle where you see McWhorter Stadium, you see the backside of Doug Kingsmore, and now you see what used to be Old Jervy Gym, as we called it. Now you see this new beautiful facility. It just really fits into that whole athletic campus area. So now the only building that's left that's actually needs remodeling is McFadden building.
Yeah, and if you think that Jervy Gym looks big, wait till you see the pictures of what they're going to do to Little John here in a couple years. It's going to be Big John over there because that thing is. I mean, I looked at the renderings, and it's like hard for my mind to wrap my mind around it because the Swan Pavilion and how like big that looked when it's built, and how like kind of big that looks on the side of Little John now. Man, Swan Pavilion's going to look like a little tiny dot on the map of what the new Little John's going to be. I mean, goodness gracious, the hill's going to be gone over there. It's going to be no hill. It kind of reminds me of what Danny Ford said when he talked about those trees above the hill. It's like, man, I miss those old trees. I'm gonna miss that old hill that was right there by that commuter lot in
Now,
the West.
nobody's don't panic. They're
Not
not
the
taking
Death
away
Valley Hill,
not the hill.
not the hill.
We're talking about the hill by Little John. That's what
Yeah,
we're talking
that
about.
thing's going to be long gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it basically is now. But man, that they're doing a lot of stuff on campus now, and don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon.
No, it's not. No, it's not. All right, football practice.
Spring practice, yeah.
Let's talk football. We got to go out there. I got to go out there and watch. I primarily watched the defense. JP watched the offense. You know how we do it, Alex. We break it up. But I'm just going to kind of go off to what I heard on offense. First of all, I think the big story is Adam Randall is getting first team reps at running back. They're trying to give him enough looks there so they can get a feel for if he can actually do it. I don't know. They just started live work yesterday. And Alex, you know what live means? That means they're tackling a little bit. So they're doing some live work. So I don't know how those going yet. When we talk to Dabo tomorrow night, we'll probably get a little more of an update on how Adam Randall's doing there.
I know my 1 rep sample size is pretty good on Adam Randall at running back. Just saying. I think everybody in this chat would agree that a 44-yard run on your 1 try that's a pretty good start. That kind of reminds me, the last time I saw a running back have that good of a first rep was Travis Etienne. So.
Yeah, very good point. Not as fast as Travis Etienne. We're not saying that, but no, good point. Good point on that. So yeah, so we'll see how that does as we're going along. But that is some news. He's working with a little bit with the first team from what we saw, doing reps and stuff like that. The wide receivers, man, it's good to see Tyler Brown out there working with the guys. And seeing how much weapons they have, Alex. They have 4 legitimate big time wide receivers.
Yep.
This is something the 2021, 2022, 2023, you died for. You were like, where are these?
You were like, we just want one.
Right.
that was what everybody was saying in those years.
Now you got 4. And, so by the way, people, and it's nothing big. It doesn't seem like Bryant Wesco's been wearing a green jersey. That just means he can't be tackled. That's all that means. He's doing all the drills and everything else, So I don't know what the situation is there, but obviously they want to protect him a little bit, so they put a green jersey on him. But he is participating in practice. He just can't be tackled. That's all that means. But again, offensive line looks good from what we could see. A lot of guys sitting out. Walker Parks is sitting out. Tristan Lee sitting out. So other guys are getting some work. Some of the younger guys, Colin Sadler's sitting out. So a lot of younger guys on the offensive line are getting some work. I think that's going to be beneficial in the fall for Clemson, getting some more depth at offensive line. Thurman, he's sitting out as well. So a lot of guys sitting out. So there's a lot of guys working on the offensive line that won't be working on the offensive line when they get to fall camp. So that's kind of where they are there. Tight end situation, I think, is the other area where people are like, okay, who's going to be the tight end? Again, a couple guys sitting out. So, I can tell you Olsen Pat Henry's sitting out right now. So he probably won't practice. Maybe Dabo said maybe later on he'll practice in the spring. But right now he hasn't done anything. He's wearing a yellow jersey. So that's going to give other guys opportunities. Sapp is getting a lot of work there. How do you say the kid's name, Christian? How do you say it? Number 87. Stand by.
Yeah, me and Will are like the 2 best people in the world for name pronunciation.
Christian Benecure. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about. Everybody out there should know. I just can't say his name. I apologize. That's why I'm a writer.
He apologizes to the entire family.
Yes, I apologize to the entire family. It's going to be spelled correctly. I can tell you that much. So people can't say Vandervort. So
Bittencourt.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Bittencourt.
Yep.
I blame Brian Hennessy for Clemson SID for making this. Here's my roster, guys. Look, see how tiny that print is. Brian, I'm getting old, dude. I need.
Will, there's this wonderful thing that guy created called Staples. And you can take that piece of paper to them, and they'll make it bigger for you.
Yeah, I know, but I have to get these glasses right here, just kind of like just to kind of read it. I don't have to do this on anything but Clemson's football roster. Nothing else. I'm fine. I can see fine with everything else but Clemson's football roster. So yeah, I'm coming at you, Brian Hennessy, because I know you're watching. Anyway, so what do we got here?
What Mel Graves asked about Gideon Davidson.
Yeah, it's early. Everybody looks good in shorts, guys. They just put the pads on. We haven't been able to see that yet. Like I said, we'll get more from Dabo. But, this is really, he's learning everything right now. So you're not going to learn much from Gideon Davidson right in the spring because he's trying to learn everything. Let's hope he can, digest it all, and soak it up and then come into fall camp and look like a monster and do what he needs to do that you want him to do. They're hoping that's the case, but you can't count on a freshman. There's a lot to take in, especially in this offense. For a running back, there's a lot of the running back has to do in this offense. And, that's why it's hard to see these freshmen come in and take over. So I'm not like, yes, they want Gideon Davidson to be ready and they want to try to use him this fall. But right now, he's just learning, man. He's soaking up everything is what he's doing right now, trying to learn as much as he can.
Yeah, I mean, physically, physically is a specimen.
Physically give him the ball and just say run. Do the Herschel Walker like Georgia did with Herschel Walker. Just say you give him the football and you just say, okay, just run. I don't care what you do. Wherever you see a hole, run through it. I'm fine with them doing that with him. If they want to go Herschel Walker style on him, I'm fine with that.
That's kind of what they did with Travis Etienne early too. They kind of just told him to run, and they take him out on pass pro. And now it's hard to do that in this offense, like you mentioned. There's so many, especially with a veteran quarterback like you have now, and veteran wide receivers and a experienced offensive line. There's a lot you can do on this offense at the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
So it's very really hard to have a running back in there without that experience who doesn't know those pass protection scenarios, doesn't know all the checks, and isn't in sync with that veteran quarterback.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that you just said it, because your quarterback run game in this offense is everything. And so if you have a running back there that doesn't know what he's doing, then that hurts your quarterback. Yep. And so you got to have a veteran running back there, in my opinion, or someone that understands the offense completely back there with the quarterback, so you can use the quarterback run game. You saw how effective the quarterback run game was last year when Phil Maffa was healthy. Look how Cade Klubnik's run game was.
Yep.
And then once people realized Phil Maffa when they're in the last part of the season was unhealthy, then people started keying on Cade, and Cade wasn't able to run the football like he was. So if the running back position can be stronger from a health standpoint, and you got guys that know what they're doing, I don't think you need to have a 1,200-yard rusher, Alex.
No, you don't.
I just think you need to have a running back that just knows what he's doing, and then that will allow Cade to be more involved in the run game to where defenses just can't tee off on him every time.
Well, in this air raid system, it's less important that you have a traditional 1,000-yard rusher. Mm-hmm. It's much more important that you have a guy who is football savvy, has a high football IQ, and can be multiple. So you want a guy who's going to be able to catch passes. You want a guy who's going to be able to have good pass pro. You want a guy who's going to be a good decoy. There's a lot that goes into the running back position in this offense. It doesn't get talked about a lot in the air raid, but the running back position is pivotal in this offense. And again, when you have an experienced quarterback that can take charge of the game at the line of scrimmage like Clemson has, that offense gets a little bit more complicated for a young guy who's trying to step into a role.
Alan Watts says Bentancur will be, or am I saying it right?
Yep. Okay.
Bentancur will be the best tight end in Clemson history before he leaves. Listen, we've heard nothing but wonderful things from the coaches about him last year. He was compared to Dwayne Allen. Okay. That's who he was compared to me. And so Dwayne Allen, in my opinion, is probably the best tight end Clemson's ever had. I throw Benny Cunningham in there as well. But if you're compared to Dwayne Allen, who could block and go catch passes and run routes, then yeah, you're in good company and you have a chance to be one of the best of all time. I've heard the same thing you're saying. Coaches are really high on him. Now he's got to take that next step this year, right? Because now a lot's going to be put on him. There is no Jake Brenningstool out there. He's going to be the guy. Now, granted, there's also Josh Sapp who's out there who they think is going to be better. And then there's this guy, who all he does is get open and he can block too. Olsen Pat Henry,
A
so
guy who showed us nothing but good things down the stretch last year. I mean, just
absolutely.
seemed to get better and better each week.
And he's a hell of a blocker as well. So I think they got good people at tight end. I really do. And I think that position is going to be as good, or if not better, than it was last year. And like I mentioned before, and you just mentioned, if the running game can be better, from a standpoint to where you can use the quarterback run game in it, that's going to open up a lot of things for the tight end as well. It all kind of runs together. It's just really what I'm trying to say here.
Yep.
You saw the potential of this offense, and at its full potential, when Cade Klubnik can run the football. That's when this offense is at its full potential. And Garrett Riley's never had a quarterback like Cade Klubnik that can run the ball, but also is 65, 67% passer who can throw the ball downfield 50, 60
and keep
yards.
in mind that Garrett Riley did have a quarterback who led TCU to a national championship game.
Right.
And Max Duggan. So he's had a good quarterback before, but
not a good passer.
That should show you how good, and that guy was in the Heisman conversation.
Right.
So that shows you how good Cade Klubnik is and how highly he thinks of Cade Klubnik for him to be in that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the offense. Let's flip over to defense. And we're going to start with, let's go ahead, Alex, pull them up here. We're going to start with Tom Allen's comments yesterday. Tom Allen said when he took the job, he went through every game film last year. And the three things he noticed was effort was not good. Guys were out of position. We said that how many times on here?
Yeah.
Guys were
out
of position.
How much we talk about gap integrity? Bleav in Clemson football podcast.
Absolutely. And then, and you can go back to LaVon Kirkland when he was on this show as well, talking about gap integrity. And then the other one is missed tackles. And he said those things stood up. So he said they were really bad. So he says, I'm going to at least go see if the effort was better in practice, like what was going on. And he says the effort was worse in practice. Like there was no effort. There was no energy in practice is what he noticed from watching film. You don't ever really hear a coach go back and say they watched practice from the year before. I mean, he went and watched not only watched the games, he went and watched practice because he wanted to see, okay, why in the world do they look this bad on game days? So, well, you look as good as you practice, right? Ain't that what your coach always told you, Alex?
Yep. Play as good as you practice.
And Tom Allen wanted to go see if that was the case, and it was. And he made no bones. And he talked about Ben Boulware being the new linebackers coach and what he brings. And you know what part of his quote was? He brings toughness, which is what we needed. Listen to that. He brings toughness, which is what we needed.
Yep.
Wow. All those comments, I just took his whole 45-minute press conference and just wrapped it all into one little nice thing. But that's basically what he said last year. Basically, they sucked last year.
Yeah.
And he gave reasons for why they sucked. Now, we all knew they sucked, but it's good to hear a coach break it down for us. And he did it in a nice way. He didn't take jabs at nobody.
Yeah, he probably said it in the most respectful way that you could just tell somebody that they sucked at their job.
Yes.
I mean, he didn't mince words, but he wasn't being a jerk either. I mean, he was very blunt, very honest. And I agree with you that seeing that he looked at practice film, man, that tells you about attention to detail. And it also shows you why he's been so successful in his first year at a new place. I mean, every place he's gone, except with the exception of Penn State, who was more about maintaining on the defensive side. With the exception of that, man, he's gotten significantly better. His defensives have at each stop. And there's no reason for me not to expect that that's going to happen at Clemson. And it's hard to take one press conference from a guy and be like, well, I'm fully convinced they're going to be a top 20 unit. It's hard to think that.
Right.
But that's what I think. Judah Davis said that on Twitter. He said top 15 defense loading when he saw those comments from Allen. And you can see, even in the practice videos that Clemson's posting, just how much more energy there is on that side of the ball.
Alex, okay, I'm glad you brought up energy. Okay, first day, we're allowed to go in their media, and it was obvious how much energy was there. First day. Ben Boulware's cussing people out. That's awesome. Chris Rump's laying into guys. That's awesome. You got TJ Parker like giving it to Mayo, over there on the side. Guys are hooping and hollering. They're getting after it. Tom Allen's on his microphone, just, letting them up, telling guys you're not in the right place. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. So,
it's just energy everywhere.
Energy's all over the doggone place. And it was refreshing to see. Now, the funny thing is the next day we come back on Monday and Dabo made them clean it up a little bit. It was quiet. There was no microphone. Ben was nice and soft-spoken, and so it wasn't. It's like, I shouldn't say he wasn't soft-spoken, but he just wasn't cursing as much, So I know that's what I noticed the next day. But then yesterday, there was still energy, by the way. And then the next day, when I came yesterday, a lot of energy. And the thing I noticed was how all 3 days what was consistent. And I asked Coach about it last night. What was consistent all 3 days, I noticed how hard they're working on tackling. I mean, they've making it a point of emphasis about tackling. And I love how he's teaching them. Alex, remember, how do guys like to tackle now these days? What do they all want to do?
Throw the shoulder at them.
And, throw the shoulder and knock the ball loose, right?
Yeah.
Right? It was so refreshing. He's doing form tackling. How to properly tackle. It's like going all the way back to high school when these guys are learning how to tackle again. It was refreshing to see. I love seeing it. This is going to be and he's on his microphone. He's saying, we're going to be the best tackling team in America. That is the new standard. There's no exception. 5 minutes later, he says the same thing again. 5 minutes later, he says the same thing again. He's putting it in their heads. Tackling is the number one thing they're going to do, and they're going to be doggone best at it. And I like that.
Another thing that I like that he stressed several times in that press conference was simplicity. That he's getting back to the basics. He's making things simple. He wants his guys to play free and with energy. And it's a lot easier to play free and play with energy if you're not trying to think about 8 billion things that you should be doing at any particular moment.
Exactly.
So I like that. When he talked about, we did our install today. We did 5 plays on install. That he's keeping things simple. He's keeping things formulaic. Now, that's very different than the Brent Venables style defense. Brent Venables defense was extremely complicated, and that was part of the benefit of it, was how complex it was. And the reason why you saw so many experienced linebackers kind of commanding that defense instead of, you didn't see a freshman linebacker out there playing 15, 20 snaps.
Of course, he benefits on this because he has 2 things that Brent Venables didn't have on those teams, though, early on. He's got Ben Boulware helping him teach who's a sponge, as he said. He's a sponge. And then he has Sammy Brown, who's the best linebacker in the country probably. And it's good, and that's going to show, and it showed that last year at times. So that makes it a little bit easier to do that, right? When you got that level. When you got a Ben Boulware coaching them, which is like Brent Venables, let's just call it what it is. Yeah. It's like Brent Venables is coaching the linebackers. You can feel good if you're Tom Allen. Tom Allen even said that. He's like, I don't have to worry about that at all. I can go coach other things. That's what he said.
Yeah, and he's got this, and Scott mentions this in the comments as well. Sounds like Allen's working on getting the coaches to coach as a unit too. Absolutely. That's absolutely what it sounds like from hearing him talk. I know I saw you and some other people mentioning in your observations from practice how mobile Tom Allen is during practice. He's not staying with one group the whole time. He's all over the place, making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Definitely seems like a much more cohesive kind of environment that he's trying to bring about. Is that kind of what it seems like to you? Just strong out front leadership.
Absolutely. He's leading. He's not just staying in one place. He's got his microphone in his hand. He's got his, he's getting after. If guy's not doing what he's supposed to do, he calls him out. He says, hey, you're not doing it. If the coach isn't doing what he's supposed to do, he doesn't like that. He calls the coach out. Everybody's held accountable for how they're coaching and how they're playing. But the energy is just like, TJ Parker yesterday, how Alex to do the jumping jacks and then they huddle up. Yeah. So after they got done doing the jumping jacks, TJ Parker is doing something like I'd never seen him do before. Like he's like, he leans back and he's like, like this, and it's just like, I'm like, dude, this is spring practice. What the heck? He's all pumped up and jacked up, man. And he runs over there. And I'm like, didn't see that last couple of years at TJ Parker.
Yeah.
Never seen that before. Different guy. His energy level is like out the roof right now. TJ Parker is. And he's just one guy that I'm talking about, but it's like that for a lot of guys. So right now, Tom Allen has is making an impression on that defense. And there's no doubt when you go out there, you feel it, you see it. Everybody gravitates over there to it. I think the fans are really going to enjoy what he brings to the defense. And I'm with Judah Davis. I think it's going to be a top 20 defense this year. I really do. And that's all they need, because if they're top 15 offense and a top 20 defense, they have a chance to do a lot of special things. There's no doubt in my mind. So real fast before we get out of here, Alex, because we got to get out of here. You got something you got to do here in a few minutes. So I wanted to go ahead and but I'll be remiss if we didn't bring this up. So could you pull it up, Alex? Clemson baseball sweeps the Gamecocks. They've now won 10 in a row after last night's win over Presbyterian. But we're not talking about upstate or PC. We're talking about how Clemson baseball swept the Gamecocks this week. And it was obvious who the better team was throughout the entire series. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. And you talk about a team that's playing with energy and passion and under good leadership. How do you not talk about the Clemson baseball team? I mean, it's just night and day. Let's just talk about the offensive side, and not even talk about the pitching, which was phenomenal all weekend. Just talk about what happened at the plate. Mm-hmm. Clemson's approaches at the plate compared to South Carolina's approach at the plate, and we know who's coaching hitting over there for that team. Night and day approach. I'm trying to think back over the weekend of how many bad at bats I saw from Clemson. I had to be less than 5 that I thought were just kind of, guys look confused. We're taking, swung at 3 pitches and had no idea what was coming. Maybe 3 at bats like that. The rest of them, quality at bats, and you face some really good starting pitchers all 3 days. It took you a while to get going, but because they took quality at bats, they were able to get to South Carolina in the later innings. Mm-hmm. And everybody wants to look at Clemson's like 8th and 9th inning success as kind of this crazy, wild thing. But if you look at the way they approach their at bats, it makes sense. If you're sticking around, hanging around, making teams get to the bullpen earlier, putting the ball in play, these are the kind of things that happen. And I wish everybody played baseball like this. I wish they played baseball like this in the major leagues. If they did, the ratings would be way better than they are, and it would be what it used to be if people still played baseball this way. But they just take good at bats. And Ethan Darden was lights out for the 3rd time in a row. Aiden Canuck struggled early, but found a way to get back on the horse and give you some length. And LeGurnick, 2 weeks in a row that LeGurnick has looked like a reliable Sunday guy. And the bullpen. I mean, you got arms you can count on in the bullpen, and they didn't even have to use all of them. It was a fun weekend for Clemson baseball.
Yeah, it was. And I think the main thing is, Clemson's offense makes it hard. They're hard outs. Every single one of them are hard outs. And so that wears on a team eventually one day. And that's how Ray Tanner's teams were. If you remember the old South Carolina teams, they were hard outs every time. They just wore you down. And eventually,
a guy like Landon Powell didn't take bad swings.
No.
That's
they always
Justin Smoke, like those South Carolina guys, Whit Merrifield. All those great players that came out of that Ray Tanner program, man, they made it hard on opposing pitchers, and they made it hard on really good pitchers to stick around.
They did.
Because they made you throw a lot of pitches.
And that's what, if you look at, and you said it best, why did Clemson's pitching was very efficient. Darden threw 7 innings. I think he threw 80 pitches at 7 innings. I mean, that is like Greg Maddux-like efficiency, the way he pitched the other day, okay? And then the same thing can be said for what LeGurnick did in his outing. But when you look at South Carolina pitching, South Carolina starters did well. I mean, they did. Yeah. They did well. They got strikeouts. They were doing, but they were having to go 4 to 5, 6, 7 pitches every at bat because Clemson's approach was still good. Even though they weren't getting on base, they were still working the pitchers. So by the 5th, 6th inning, you get the starter out of there and you get to the bullpen. you still got that same approach, but you're not playing the same kind of level pitcher. And so you're able to take advantage of it, and that's what Clemson did, and that's why early innings they did the things they did. Defensively, oh my gosh. Clemson had guys, so you can understand, Clemson has three shortstops playing in the infield. They have Andrew Shufro, who's a shortstop, who's unbelievable, by the way. Then they have Purify at second base, who is, if it wasn't for Shufro coming back, would have been the starting shortstop for Clemson this year.
Yep.
And then there's Pano playing third base.
Who might be one of the best college defensive players I've ever seen.
Exactly.
And I watched Logan Davidson play and all these great guys that have come and played shortstop for Clemson going back 30 years. And what Josh Pano is able to do anywhere you put him in the infield. And Scott Millsap mentions Gaffney at first base.
Yes. Gaffney at first base is, what do they call it? Somebody was calling him the stone wall or something over there, where he just makes every play. Like, if you throw the ball like anywhere near him, he's making the play at first base. It's just unbelievable, this baseball team right now. And I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship in baseball or anything. I'm just saying they're really impressive. They're really good. And so I'm very
really fun to watch. They're a fun team to watch. If you are in the upstate of South Carolina, Friday to Sunday, I don't know why in the world you wouldn't get out to Doug Kingsmore Stadium and watch that team
at least one.
Because they're fun to watch. You got a coach who cares about your experience in the stands, and he wants to put a winning product on there. It's great, man. I wish I was around to see more of this team.
I wish you were too, buddy. They're fun. They are fun to watch. I'm enjoying them. And they'll be tomorrow, 3-game series with Davidson starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Go check them out over at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Last thing before we get out of here real quick, Alex, you got a couple minutes here.
Yeah.
Clemson Athletics is on a heater. We mentioned baseball on a 10-game win streak. Softball's got a 14-game win streak. Clemson basketball has a 7-game win streak. Let's see. Clemson lacrosse has a 6-game win streak. And Clemson men's tennis has a 5-match win streak. So Clemson Athletics is on a heater right now. I mean,
I can't remember a time
when
it felt like every time I turn on the TV, Clemson's beating somebody in something. I mean, that's what's happening right now. And the guy who needs a big kudos for that is Graham Neff. Built winners on every surface on the campus.
He's hired good coaches. Whether it be gymnastics, whether it be lacrosse, whether it be softball, he's done a good job bringing in new coaches and then doing the same thing. Look at Greg Poppy's doing with the women's basketball team. Obviously Brad Brownell made sure he stayed, kept him at Clemson. Brought in Eric Backage, and so then he's making sure Dabo Sweeney's happy and Dabo's getting the coaches he needs. Graham Neff has done a heck of a job. It's awesome to see Clemson on the heater they are right now, Alex. It's unbelievable. So congratulations to Graham Neff and all those coaches and players and athletes out there as they keep it going. And, bring us the beer stand. Guys, I hear it's going to be this weekend. So, Scott, if you want to get some beer at Doug Kingsmore Stadium, I'm hearing it's going to be this weekend. So go give it a shot.
If not, Will has to buy you one.
We'll buy one at the Esso Club. Anyway, got to get Alex out of here. For Alex Dodd, I'm Will Vandervort. We'll talk to you next time on Bleav in Clemson Football.